Hi guys, welcome to Learn Kenyan Law with Wanjiku. Today's topic is under the Criminal Procedure Code and we're going to be talking about the rights of an arrested person. The rights of an arrested person are very well documented under Article 49 of our Kenyan Constitution, and of course these specific rights reflect the fundamental principle that a person is innocent until proven guilty and that a person has a right to dignity. Of course, the police officers and the courts have a very big obligation to ensure that these specific rights that we're going to talk about today are respected. So some of these rights that you have when you're arrested are the right to information, you have the right to remain silent, you have the right to an advocate and communication with others, you have a right not to be compelled to make a confession or an admission, you have a right to be separated from convicted prisoners, you have a right to bail, you have a right to appear in court within 24 hours. So now let us talk about each specific right but in detail. Again, I have said that these rights you're going to get them under Article 49 of the Constitution of Kenya. And basically what we mean when we say that you have the right to information, this is to say that if you are arrested, you must be informed promptly of the reason of the arrest. And the information must be conveyed in a language that the arrested person understands. So what am I saying here? If I am being arrested and I do not understand English, the only language I understand is Kiswahili, the person who is arresting me ought to inform me why they're arresting me in Kiswahili, in a language that I understand. However, it is also very important to note that this does not only imply in speaking in a language that the person is conversant in. However, it also implies in that the person who is arresting me should use ordinary terms that a lay person like me can understand. Basically, that is what we mean when we're talking about the right to information. So the next right that you have when you're arrested is the right to remain silent. Of course, as an arrested person, I have absolutely no obligation to provide any kind of information to the police officers. In fact, if they arrest me and I choose to keep quiet for the 1 hour ride to the police station or to the cell, that is my right and I should not be punished for it. So it is important to note that if you are an arrested person, you have the right to remain silent. And of course, when you're arrested, you must be informed that you have the right to remain silent. And of course, you also have to be told the consequences of not remaining silent. And mostly the consequences of not remaining silent is that whatever you say can be used in a court of law. So if you say something, the police officers can choose to use it against you in a court of law. So of course, that is why most of the time your lawyer will advise you, you know what, don't say anything until I arrive. So it is very important to note that you have the right to remain silent and no one should punish you for that. The next right that you have as an arrested person is the right to an advocate and communication with others. And this is basically saying that if you're arrested, you have a right to talk to your advocate or to your lawyer, or rather to any person who you think the assistance is necessary. If you think that your mother is going to help you one way or another, or your brother or your sister, you have the right to communicate with them, because some of us don't have advocates numbers on our phones. It is also important to note that the Persons Deprived of Liberty Act provides that anyone deprived of liberty has the right to communicate with any person of his or her choice, not just those whose assistance is useful. So this is to say that if you're arrested and you feel like the only person you want to hear from is your mother, and maybe they're not even useful, you just want to hear their voices so that it can calm you down, you have that right. So it's important, of course, but you always you better choose to communicate with someone who is of assistance, because then it helps. So if you have an advocate's number, feel free to reach out and the advocate has a right to talk to you. The next kind of right that you have when you're arrested is the right to not be compelled to make a confession or an admission. This is a very important right for you to understand. If you're arrested, you must not be compelled to make any confession. No one should tell you, if you admit to doing this, I will let you go. That shouldn't happen. It is your right to just go, keep quiet. You should not even be compelled by a police officer or any other person to make any confession or any admission. Of course, this specific right is related to the privilege against self-incrimination. As an arrested person, you have the privilege of not self-incriminating yourself. What do I mean? You have the privilege of not giving evidence against yourself that is going to harm you one way or another. The next right that we're going to be talking about is the right to be separated from convicted prisoners. Of course, a convicted prisoner is someone who has been arrested, has been taken to court, has been charged, and maybe they are serving their sentences. You have the right to be separated from those specific convicted prisoners. Of course, this specific right recognizes the fact that you're innocent until proven guilty. It helps avoid stigmatization of the accused. Of course, it recognizes the regimes for convicted prisoners are different from those of the accused. And again, this specific right avoids the corruption of the accused by possibly hardened criminals. Of course, this is to say that, can you imagine you've been arrested, you're a very innocent person, you have never met some hardened criminals, people who've committed murder or such things, and then you're mixed together. Of course, one way or another, if you stay around such people for a very long time, it corrupts even your mind. It corrupts even the way you think or talk or such things. So this right recognizes such things. The Persons Deprived of Liberty Act also expands this and talks about separate accommodation. And they are really strict on saying that women should be separated, men should be separated, intersex individuals should be separated, refugees should be separated, and children should be held separately from one another. So this is to mean that according to the Persons Deprived of Liberty Act, men and women and children and intersex and refugees should not all be held at the same place, They should be separated. Men, normally, if you have ever been arrested, I'm sure you've seen that sometimes men are kept separately and women are kept separately, and sometimes, especially children are also held separately. Of course, this specific act sets out the number of requirements for the condition in which a person may be detained in. So this is to say that this act is very vigilant on saying that the detention facilities, they have to be humane. These detention facilities have to be hygienic. And of course, they should include medical services and decent food. Of course, some of these cells that we go to here in Kenya, they are not hygienic and they are not humane. And of course, sometimes even the medical service is nowhere around the vicinity. However, it is very important to note that there is still growth. They're still growing. There's still some changes that we're seeing in our cell facilities. So the next kind of right that we're going to talk about is the right to appear in court within 24 hours. So this is to say, if I have been arrested today in the morning, I should be taken to court not later than 24 hours after my arrest. However, it is very important to note that sometimes these 24 hours end outside the ordinary court hours. This is to say, sometimes you're arrested on a Friday evening. Of course, a Saturday there is no court, and Sunday is not a court day. So then this arrested person, you must be presented to court by the end of the next court day. So this is to say that if I have been arrested on Friday, I have to be presented in court at least by Monday. Okay, and it is also very important for us to note that during the first court appearance, the arrested person, or rather the accused person, they have to be charged or either be informed of the reason of the continued detention or released. So if you've been arrested, you've been taken to court, you have the right to be informed of what you're being charged with, or to be informed of the reason for the detention continuing, or either to be released. And so, of course, the other right that we're going to talk about is that as an arrested person, you have the right to bail. Bail is just basically having to either pay some money for you to go home as you continue attending trial, or either bail and bond. You have the right to bail, and of course this bail has to be of a reasonable condition. For example, you've stolen a chicken in the village. Of course, the kind of bail that you should be given should be reasonable. It would be very unreasonable for the judge to give you a bail of 10 million and you're being accused of stealing one chicken. So of course this bail has to be reasonable. And unless there are compelling reasons for the person not to be released, then you have the right to bail. So when I say about a compelling reason, basically I mean, for example, if maybe the judge is afraid, or rather the defense is afraid that you're going to go and tamper with a specific witness, or if the person you hurt is your child, and if you're released from bail, you're expected to go and live in the same house with that child, then that's a compelling reason for you not to be granted bail. So, of course, there are some people who should not be detained in custody at all, or rather, there are some minor offenses, which the law is very clear. There is no reason of detention. And mostly these offenses are usually the offenses that are either punishable by a fine or an imprisonment of not more than 6 months. Some of these offenses include minor traffic offenses. You know, if you have done something bad on the traffic, maybe you instead of stopping when it's red, you continued going. Of course, that's a minor traffic offense. So you should be granted bail and you ought not to be detained. It is also very important that children should not be detained unless it is the last resort. The only reason why a child should be detained is unless that is the last resort. However, mostly we rarely see children being detained, and of course, even if a child is detained, is under a special kind of circumstance. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that you have understood what your rights are when you're arrested, and now you are more informed. See you next time, and thank you. Bye.